story on that. So I picked up my granddaughter yesterday from school she attends, right? She's only 4. And one of the little kids, like after school, one of the little boys said out a name to me, "Are you here to pick up so-and-so?" And I said, "No, I'm here to pick up Armani, my granddaughter." And I said, "Yeah, I'm her grandfather." And the other boy said, "Well, I knew you were someone's grandfather." I said, "Because of my old
Thanks for the confirmation."
Man, I'll tell you what, from the mouth of babes, brother, if you want to know where you stand, just ask them.
I know you're old enough to remember Art Linkletter's about the kids. The kids say the darndest thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I remember that show. Well, you asked me right as we were about to go on the air if the Gators have a game this week, and I said, yeah, at Miami they have a game. Whether they show up for it or not remains to be seen. I remain forever optimist, so we'll see.
That's right. The Gators are going to do it.
Go Gators!
Come on, Gators! We're rooting for you.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into something right away here, Ted, because the big thing happening over the last few days since, of course, Charlie Kirk's unfortunate assassination and all of that has been that the left is actually experiencing some of the things that, if you want to call it the right, if you want to call it that, that conservatives have been experiencing for quite some time, and that is kind of cancel culture, so to speak. And there's a debate happening now, which I'm glad it's happening, but is it cancel culture or free speech? And where do we stand in all of that? And I just ask you, and then we'll get into some more details in a minute. Do you think we're at a crisis point when it comes to free speech, not only in the United States, but literally any freedom-loving people or country? Do you sense that we're at a crisis point with that, Ted?
If it continues to be weaponized, absolutely. And you brought up a good point. If you go back over the years, and I'm going to start at the Tea Party. When the Tea Party first started, you had all these 501c3 organizations that were trying to get nonprofit status. And Lois Lerner was the secretary of the IRS, or in charge of the IRS. And this was under the Obama years. And they were slow tracking these organizations while all the liberal ones, not all of them, but I'll say the majority of the liberal ones were going right through. And so there was suppression. All right. And then as you move forward, there was suppression of free speech. When you look at under the Biden and Harris administration, the parents at these school board meetings were getting shot down and putting on domestic terrorist watch lists. So this has been happening on the left, as you said. Now that the right is really standing up for rule of law, and and we're going to get into the Jimmy Kimmel thing and things like that. The left wants to weaponize that and say, "Oh, they're against free speech." Absolutely not. When you have free speech, also the important thing is you've got to have responsibility for that speech, and there are consequences to your words. And I think the great Barack Obama once said that words have meanings and consequences, and I think they need to remember that on the left.
Well, it's interesting you brought up about the Tea Party, and of course you and I kind of met through that, Ted, in a way.
We sure did.
Because it was kind of really jump starting about the same time you and I were on different campaign trails, but we ran into each other. So I know you have a lot of experience with the Tea Party, so I want to ask you a couple questions now that you mentioned that. Do you remember where the Tea Party went, all the burned up buildings that they left behind?
Oh, yeah, and the riots and all the bodies bleeding. Yeah, they were everywhere, weren't they?
Oh, the trash that was everywhere.
That was Antifa.
Yeah, the graffiti and the trash that was everywhere. Do you remember that? Because I don't remember that.
I tell you what, those things were so well organized, and the people were so well respected or respectful. And I remember the first one I went to was out in Trenton, Florida. And this was when I was contemplating running. And there were hundreds of people there in Trenton, Florida. And it was God, country, family, and people were respectful. There was no mess. And, it's a whole different dichotomy than when you look at what the other side does. And I hate to keep using the left and the radical left and all that, because we need to have language that brings America together. But there is that faction today that is anti-American, and we can't they cannot continue in this country the way they have been, because they're tearing this country apart and they're dividing this country. And we're trying to bring this country together. You know, it's like you said, the Tea Party, you know, they were all about the values of this country, standing up for those, promoting those, and trying to build those stronger. Well, the other side was tearing those down and continue to date to do the same.
Well, free speech is it's a blessing without a doubt. It's a blessing without a doubt. But in a way, and people need to kind of hear me there, it's kind of a blessing and a curse in a way.
Sure.
Because first of all, you mentioned it yourself, you have to be responsible. Freedom comes with a great deal of responsibility. Liberty especially comes with a great deal of responsibility. But the big difference today, and say, even in my lifetime, is now that everybody to a certain extent has a platform. Social media has given us all a much broader voice, because, when I was growing up, there were probably people saying all kind of things that I never ever heard, because, you didn't see it on social media. So social media itself is a blessing and a curse, because we are able to be on here today, and we very much appreciate that. But at the same time, I think people are not taking responsibility enough for various things, not only speech, but the responsibility of being a citizen in a free republic is a great deal of responsibility.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, John. And when you have a nation like ours that has free choice, and that's one of the tenets, when you bring everything together, it's free choice, self-determining. But with that, you have to have responsibility. You have to be responsible for your actions. It's like I've got I'm down up here in the mountains. I don't know if I should do this, but I've got a pistol right here, and it's my choice. It's free choice how I use this. And when you get to where you go to the dark side, that's when bad things happen. And so it's a responsibility that comes with it. It's just like what we're saying on this show. It could be a good thing or a bad thing, and we choose to bring out the goodness of having free choice and free speech. And it's interesting that the founders, and keep in mind where they were. They didn't have internet, they didn't have electricity, running water, they didn't have anything we have today. They came up, and what did they come up with in the amendments? What was the first and most important? Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. And there was a reason for that, and that has carried through the hundreds of years since then, right at 250 years, as the primary tenet of a free society. And they also talked a lot about being virtuous, well-educated, and responsible. And those are the things that the media wants to make excuses, not the media, not just the media, but people on that radical left. They want to make excuses for people not having to be responsible. And you can't have a free society if you don't have those responsibilities. So we all need to talk about, you need to be responsible for your actions. And I know that we're going to talk more about that.
Absolutely. Well, this whole cancel culture thing, and I'm not necessarily saying that what's happening with some of the progressives that are either being taken off the air and all that kind of stuff is necessarily, censorship or cancel culture. You got to look at each situation a little bit individually. But it's been happening, as I said earlier, for decades to conservatives. And let me tell you, it happened to me. I got canceled basically because I asked questions. I don't know if I've really ever told you all about this, Ted, but I was having up to 200,000 views on some of my shows when I had my John Martin talk show, and YouTube canceled me and canceled me basically for asking questions about certain things, not making statements, but questions about election integrity and questions, oh my God, about COVID in the early stages and what the government was doing. I was just asking questions, and they literally canceled me for that. And when I tried to appeal it, I never could get through to a live person.
No, you can't.
Now I've come back and they put me back on my site, but I haven't really been using it. But I know that firsthand.
Just think about that. That's a suppression of free speech. And if you go back, you were canceled. Ward was canceled. We got our website blocked. They canceled us. And when I was in Congress, we had a commercial, and it was a parody of Saturday Night Live. and we had the guys dressed, and I think it was the Reno 9/11, whatever show that was, where they had the cops from Las Vegas or from Reno, Nevada. And it was, at the time, it seemed like anything I said in the news, they attacked me and just really twisted it around. So we did this parody, and the social media shut us down and closed our website. They said it was hate speech, and it was really funny. That was back in 2017, 2018. And I talked at the University of Central Florida last year, and one of the students brought this up and said, well, don't you think this was hate speech? And I went through the commercial, and I said, no, I think it was kind of humorous, but they'll cancel you. And that's the danger we're in nowadays. And it's interesting, President Trump's over in England, and the press asked him about what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. Is that not some form of suppression and going against free speech? And I know you got a video of that, and we're going to play that, and we'll let him answer that, because I think his answer was the perfect answer on that.
Well, let me just real quick, because people may be interested in this. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you
Sure,
the question.
If it's coming from you, they're interested.
The question that got me canceled, Ted, here it is right here. So I didn't say that that Biden was not the legitimate president. I didn't say that Trump didn't lose the election. None of that. This is what I said. I said, if you believe that Biden won the election fair and square, then you have to believe that he was the greatest candidate in the history of running for president, because he got by far the most votes, according to them, anybody in history. You have to believe that there were Black Americans that had the opportunity to vote for Obama twice and did not show up to the polls, but right, magically showed up to Joe Biden's polls. You have to believe all of that. And there was a couple more things. I said, if you believe all of that, then absolutely Joe Biden won the presidency. And that's all I said. And they canceled me for that.
For that, they canceled you? Now,
they canceled me for that.
Because they want to push a false narrative and really make it look like Biden won on his own volition and his credentials and all that. Guy was one of the worst candidates this country's ever had. Absolutely the worst president. And I didn't think anybody could be worse than Jimmy Carter or Barack Obama. But Biden sure, he did. Of course, Biden was Obama's third term. So,
well, since you mentioned it, the difference between Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter was a lousy president, but he was a great, decent human being.
He was a good person.
He was a good man. Yep. And that's the big difference, because Biden has never really been that kind of person. You go back and look at his history, and Donald Trump actually alluded to that in the press conference.
Carolyn and I talked about this yesterday. We went to Obama's second inauguration. That's when I got elected. And we went to something, we were brand new in Washington. We went to everything, and it was an inaugural speech at the Builders Museum in Washington. Really beautiful building. And Biden spoke. And the anger and the vitriol, he goes, we won, and we're going to stick it to the Republicans from here on out. I mean, and I'm like, I can't believe this guy is the vice president of the United States, and he's got that kind of attitude and saying, hey, we're here for America. But it was all party politics, and we won, and we're going to stick it to those. We stuck it to the Republicans. And he went on and said some nasty stuff after that. He's just not a nice guy. And I'm glad his legacy, I'm sure you've seen, he can't raise any money for speaking fees, and he can't raise any money for his library.
Yeah. Well, he needs to advertise for Depends or something like that.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
And I don't wish that way.
Agenda for memory.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, we're going to play because one of the things that's generating all this racket right now about, censorship and everything else is, of course, Jimmy Kimmel. And we're going to play a little snippet, in case people have not seen this, of what Jimmy Kimmel said literally the night after Mr. Kirk had been assassinated. Check this out, and it's very short. We'll come back and talk about it.
With the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
ABC's announcement came after TV station owners like Nexstar and Sinclair said they would preempt Kimmel's show indefinitely.
And there you have it. Now, whether or not that's egregious enough to be canceled or whatever, I leave that up to the executives at ABC and Disney and everything else. But certainly it was untrue. And he knew for a fact it wasn't the truth. And there's overwhelming evidence that what he's saying was not true.
Right.
And, people make their choices. Remember, Jimmy Kimmel said right after the election of Donald Trump that if you voted for Donald Trump, don't listen to me. Don't watch my show. And people took him at his word. But what are your thoughts about what he said and, whether or not he should have been taken off the air and all of that? It's a business decision ultimately, but go ahead, Ted.
Well, if you look at the timeline, the way I understand it, Charlie Kirk got assassinated Wednesday of last week. Jimmy Kimmel, if I remember, said that Monday of this week. So we already knew who the assassin was, and I'm not going to mention his name because he doesn't deserve that. So Jimmy Kimmel knew, for 5 days what the truth was, but he's out there trying to build this false narrative that the MAGA movement wants to make it anybody but one of them. And the facts are it was somebody that wasn't part of the MAGA movement. And for him to be pushing that out there, and again, when you bring in the heat of the country and the discord that we have going on in this country, he wasn't being responsible, and it was a business decision. And I commend those organizations for doing what they did. And, ultimately, like you said, it's a business decision.
Well, the latest thing.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
It's a business decision, but I think it was also the right thing to do because of the garbage he was spewing. And I can say I've never watched a Jimmy Kimmel program. I just didn't like the guy from years ago. And, so it's not going to be any lost talent on me from my perspective.
Well, Jimmy, there is a video of Kimmel earlier in his career on the show itself talking about how he researches things, and if he comes out and makes a mistake, he immediately comes out and apologizes and all of that. And apparently the latest stuff coming out of, if you believe it all, is that they wanted him to go on and apologize for what he said, and he absolutely refused to, and that's when they pulled him. I don't know if that's actually factual or not. I'm saying that up front, but that is the reports that are coming out. But the progressives want to blame Donald Trump for
Sure.
Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled and Colbert. Of course, Colbert just won an Emmy, for God's sakes, on a show that was failing by any measure. But I want to play this video. You mentioned
that was
President
a consolation prize for him because, again, I used to listen to him a little bit back years ago, and he was somewhat funny, but then he just got more and more to the dark side and just real negative, and everything was, he was attacking conservatism and anybody in power. He attacked me, and all that stuff, and it's just, I've got no use for that. Life is short, and you become who you associate with, you listen to, and the books you read. And he was not somebody I wanted to emulate.
Well, you mentioned him with Colbert. I got to tell you up front, not about the show, the Tonight Show or whatever he was doing before, but when he had his Colbert show that was on Comedy Central, I was actually a very big fan of it. And it was a total parody of a lot of things that I believe in.
Sure.
It was a complete parody, but it was funny, and he actually brought out some pretty interesting points, and it was humorous. I enjoyed it, even though he was in a sense mocking some of the things that I was talking about on my show. Not directly, but you know what I'm saying. So
that's good comedy. That's good.
I don't mind being made fun of. That's not the point,
Right.
But he got to be just acidic. And basically, he quit being funny. He just became totally political, But I want to play this. You mentioned Donald Trump over in England at his press conference, and he's back now, I think, or on his way back. And he was asked in the press conference with the Prime Minister of England about Jimmy Kimmel and whether or not, in a sense, he had a hand in it.
That's why you're the salty dog, because I mentioned it, and you got it. You've got it already teed up, ready to go. That's how fast.
Let's go, man. We're cued in, brother.
Of a very well-known chat show host in America last night, Mr. Kimmel. Is free speech more under attack in Britain or America?
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
We saw the dismissal of a very well-known chat show host in America last night.
I tell you, Ted, if anybody knows about ratings and everything else, it's Donald Trump, because he had the #1 rated show on TV with The Apprentice and all of that. But, Trump just said it like it is. The man got canceled because it was a business decision and he didn't have talent. And I would add a few other things. He literally told half the country, don't watch me. Who in their right mind has a show? Because I tell people all the time right here, I don't care what your politics are. I hope you'll watch our show.
That's right. Be a sponsor.
Absolutely. The more the merrier.
No, it is, because you got to have that open dialogue. And, I was guilty of doing that in town hall meetings. People were mad at me, and it was the same group that follow you from town to town to town in the same day. We do 4 in a day. And I just told them, I says, if you don't like what I'm doing, fire me. I'm okay. Just fire me. And that's kind of what Jimmy Kimmel just said. If you don't watch me.
Yeah, it's like if you've ever watched, and I did this actually with Charlie Kirk back in the day on UF campus, and you've seen me a little bit in action, Ted. When I go to any of these rallies and stuff like that, whether it's a progressive or right or left or whatever, I don't put my opinion out there much at all. Now, I don't shy away from it if people ask me, but I truly want to hear what they're saying and why they're doing what they're doing.
I noticed that at the Tesla rally or protest, and at one of the other ones you did, you get right in there and you're not shy, and you are really looking to find out the perspective of the other side.
Yeah, because I know what I think. I don't have to hear what I think over and over. I really and truly, I guess in a way, I'm like Charlie Kirk in that sense. Sure. I truly want to hear what other people are thinking, what's motivating them, because, I could be wrong, as the Fonz you had a hard time saying. Believe it or not, Ted, I've been wrong before, and my opinion has changed over time. Imagine that. So I'm really wanting to hear dialogue from other people, and I would love to hear it on this show. If people sometimes write some vile stuff on things that I post, as long as it's not personal and attacking other people, I don't mind. I like to see the debate on our sites and all of that. So I encourage people to have difference of opinions and express them.
No, I think you're right. And if we don't have that, you get a breakdown in that communication. And I think we're all aware of that. And if you have that breakdown in communication, you start separating and you become factional or tribal. And, that's never a good outcome from those things. And that's where you got to have that dialogue, and you got to have free speech. And I'm so blessed in this country that we have that. Now, it can get questioned, if you say something like you're going to go out and blow up something or, pull the fire alarm in a movie theater, or
in Congress.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back and pick this up about free speech, responsibility, and all of that. So please support our sponsors. Become a sponsor. Look at the tagline. It says Contact Freddie, and we'd love to have you on board. We'll be right back, Ted.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are
Lewis Oil Company, Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Welcome back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with the old salty dog, your host, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, Ted Yoho. Well, Ted, when we went to break, we were talking about the cancel culture versus free speech, responsibility, and all of that, and how all this has now become an issue with the progressives because it's beginning to affect them. They're actually being held accountable to what they're actually saying. Well, I want to talk a little bit about how this has been happening for a while to the conservative movement. We went over a few things, but people tend to forget this. Donald Trump, when he was president the first go around, he had almost 90 million Twitter followers, 90 million Twitter followers. And that's before it became X. And he got canceled, wiped out permanently from Twitter literally overnight because they said that he was at a risk of inciting more violence. Now, I only mention that because of this. At the time they canceled Donald Trump on Twitter with 90 million followers, essentially, Iran, the Imperial Guard or whatever they call them, had a Twitter account. Hamas had a Twitter account. Hezbollah had a Twitter account. All these terrorist groups had Twitter accounts, and they were recruiting off of Twitter. We know that for a fact. ISIS was as well, but they canceled Donald Trump. I mean, wow.
Donald Trump and Ward Scott and you.
Yeah, they got us, man.
You know, when you think about that, John, that really is scary because the apparatus in government then, the deep state that is still there now. And incidentally, I just got back, and the person I was just referring to, she was in the CIA for 10 years. She goes, I had no idea how deep the deep state was and still is. And it was that apparatus that saw the MAGA movement, that spun out of the Tea Party movement, how they were gaining traction, and it was upsetting the apple cart and the plans of that left progressive agenda. And so they were doing everything they could to suppress that. You look back and you look at all the things that those organizations did, how they were spying on people, how they're spying on Trump. And they started shutting down these things, these websites like Donald Trump's, and how they put pressure on Facebook, on Zuckerberg, on these other people to suppress the truth, and to shut this stuff down because they didn't like that narrative because it empowered the MAGA movement, but it was going against what they were really trying to do. Look at how they interfered with the election, blaming Russia and Trump, but it was them with the Joe Biden and the laptop of Hunter Biden. Had that been exposed, Trump would have been president then, but it's probably good that he didn't win that because, it gave him 4 years to prepare, and that's why you're seeing him be so effective now.
Well, far be it from me to get too conspiratorial, but let me tell you what I knew. I knew that Donald Trump had opened up a can of worms and endangered his life, talking about the deep state, when he said this phrase, the military industrial complex. He was the first president I remember saying those words since Eisenhower said them, and of course, very famous. And when he uttered that, I think twice during his first term, it scared me for him, because I do believe that there is a worldwide tied into the military industrial complex, and who knows what happened to me for saying that. But when he said that, I was like, man, be careful, sir, because they will come after you.
Yeah, I mean, they don't play, and it's not just them. You look at these NGOs, non-government organizations that were recipients of a lot of the foreign assistance money. 60 to 80% of the money went to run the organization. There's a NGO industrial complex too, and that can be said in a lot of different branches of government. But the military industrial complex, you're right. Eisenhower was the first one to warn about that, and that threat has not gone away. And that's that deep state. This operative was telling me that it's there and it's still there. And how do we work around that? And it's by open airness and put sunshine on it, let people see this and say, do we really want to do these things? And keep in mind that apparatus is there to counter a lot of what's going on in other countries that they're doing with their same industrial complexes over there. So that's why we, the citizens, have to be well educated, and we have to know these things and just say, we're done with this. We want to focus on those things that government was designed, our form of government was designed to do, and to get away from all this nefarious stuff and this garbage that we're doing. Let's focus on education. Let's focus on healthcare. Let's build this country stronger for future generations, not get in all these other things. We're right on the verge of World War III, and I just told you about the theater that's happening and starting to develop in Venezuela in the Western Hemisphere. And, I don't think anybody wants that kind of violence or that kind of destruction. And that's why these elections matter. We've got to get educated and get people in there that aren't going to allow this to happen.
Well, we're going to talk in a few minutes about, but you triggered a thought in me, as you always do, Ted. Good. We're going to talk in a few minutes about whether or not there is ways to come together, whether it's even possible, in just a second. But before we get to that, I will mention this, that, if you look at it, one of the big differences between the progressive, which has become basically the Democratic Party, and people like you and me, Ted, is that, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think we believe that in the Constitution, in a sense that it was created to not empower government, but to protect the free citizens from the overreach of government. That's what we fundamentally, I think, believe in, whereas it seems like the progressive leftists believe that government is the solution. We heard that from like Tim Kaine, that senator, that our rights come from government, not from inalienable rights from God. So I really believe that is the fundamental issue. Now, there's all this violence and stuff like that, but the fundamental difference is how we see the Constitution and the purpose of government, I think, is at the core of it.
You're absolutely right. And when things get really complicated, how do you get out of that? The best thing to do is go back to the basics. Go back to how this country is formed and why it was formed. It was get away from a tyrannical government. And so they were very careful in their wording and the phrases and the arguments they had. And I can't emphasize that book of Noah Feldman's Genius, Patriot, President about James Madison. The arguments are there 200 years ago that we're going through right now, and why they put those in there. Because if you can't have a government that protects the individual rights, our God-given rights, on like Senator Kaine. I mean, I still can't believe that guy said that, and he's a member of Congress in our government. But if you can't protect those very basic things, everything else starts to break down, John. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that. And you're right. The progressive left wants to tear everything down about our Constitution because they believe it's a living, breathing document, and it's written in stone. It's as ludicrous as saying the Ten Commandments are a living, breathing document. And no, it's not. It's 10 commandments that came down from God to Moses. And we ought to follow them. Life would be a lot better. But they want to tear that down because they don't like it. And as you said, and Ronald Reagan said, I put you two in the same category, is they think on that progressive left, the anti-American people think that government is the solution. Now watch the parallel here. In China, the Communist Party is the highest entity in the universe. There is no higher power. There is no God. There is no transcendental being. The highest power in the universe is the Chinese Communist Party. The role of the citizen is to support the party, and the party's primary purpose is to grow the communist manifesto bigger and encompass the whole world. And that's the difference between us. Our government empowers the individual. Communism and what the liberal progressive left is doing is they want to empower government to control the individual. And that's really the dichotomy here.
Yeah, well, I want to play this video because, I used to be mayor of my community here, and I'm not trying to single me out, but I can tell you this, being the mayor of a town, whether it's a little town or a big town, especially your hometown, it's a very unique position in a sense, more than any other kind of elected position, because you're having to listen to all these different sides.
Sure.
You're trying to balance all this stuff out. And I want to play this video of something that just happened this past week, I believe, in Dearborn, Michigan. I need to set this up. This is the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, which is the only, I think, city that has an all-Muslim commission. And I'm not trying to make it about this, but they honored this gentleman. I'm not sure. I don't know whether they deserve it or not. It really doesn't matter. He is a member of the community, a journalist, and they named a street after him, which I don't particularly have a problem with. But this minister, who may or may not be controversial, came before them and basically criticized them for naming that. And none of that to me is that important, because each town has their own issues. But what the mayor said to this guy is, to me, inexcusable, no matter, even if the dude was dead wrong. And I want to play this, and it means a lot to me personally, because
it does.
I just
powerful.
can't
It's powerful.
that.
Yeah.
It's powerful to me, Ted. And so let's play it, and we'll move on to some other stuff. But here, check it out.
Sign up there, it's almost like having, naming a street Hezbollah Street or Hamas Street. Hezbollah, bombed the embassy in Beirut, and including many Americans. So I just feel it's quite inappropriate.
You are an Islamophobe, and although you live here, I want you to know, as mayor, you are not welcome here.
Well, that mayor sat there and said that he would celebrate, have a parade, when that guy, if he actually moved out of the city of Dearborn, Michigan, and literally said, you are not welcome here. I can't imagine a mayor telling a citizen. I have no idea how long that guy's lived there, but I had controversies. I had people, I could just tell you all kind of stories, but I would never tell someone, you don't belong here. You are not welcome in this community. I may have an honest debate with them, but my God, is that where we're moving in politics?
Unfortunately, and the interesting thing, this guy says we should coexist. And
yeah, he said you don't coexist. Wow.
And it took me back, because I counted the people on there, and I saw how many that didn't have a traditional American name. And you're right, the majority were of Middle Eastern descent, it looked like, in their names. And it reminds me of that book of, I talk all the time about Samuel Huntington's The Clash of Civilizations. And it goes through the how you go from a very small amount of a population that grows. And if you look at the Muslim population, they have on an average, I think it's 8 births per woman in America and around the world. And, the European, the Anglo-Saxons, the white, and even the African-American, we're in our country, we're down to 1.8 births per family or per woman. And you can't maintain a population that way. And I bring that up because that is what's described in that book, and it changes the whole culture. And all you have to do is look at England today compared to 30 years ago. and you'll see how the population and the demographics have changed. And with that goes the norms, the traditions, and the rule of law. Not that they're unruly, but the laws changed. And that's what's happening here in America. And that's where my argument always was. People say, well, you're trying to keep America in the good old days back in the 60s and all that. I said, no, I'm not. The face of America will always change. But the thing I went to fight for, and I hope we all do, especially this mayor in Dearborn, Michigan, is the fight to protect the core values and the founding principles. And it's interesting, if you go and listen to the guy they named this street after, his name is Osama Simaldi, I think it is. He came here as an immigrant and he assimilated and became a very wealthy person. And he says, no other country would allow me to do what I did. And that's the message that people need to understand. Assimilate. You can coexist, but you need to assimilate and believe in one system. And that is the U.S. Constitution and the constitutional republic. And I'll respect your right, your religion and all that, but don't change the fundamental principles of this country.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that gentleman in the street, and I'm glad you did, because if you look at the extended video, he is interviewed about it, and he doesn't say anything negative about the guy that was being critical of him. I'm not sure what his opinion is, but he talks about how he's proud of his culture and all that, but how blessed he is to be in America since the 70s. It is amazing, so I tip my hat to that. But let's move on to whether or not this idea of whether we can come together, because we need to come together to a certain, we're not ever going to be all on the same page, but they keep saying we need to come together. I want to play this video. This was coexist. The mayor, Brandon Johnson of Chicago. And listen, I mean, what he says in this, and I wonder if we can ever coexist with someone who believes this. Check this out.
And law enforcement is a sickness that has not led to safe communities. I'm going to work hard every single day to protect the people who are caught up in violence in this city. Guess why? You want to know why? Because the vast majority of them look like me. This president has never asked a very simple question to me, Brandon Scott, Barbara Lee, Randall Woodfin. He doesn't talk to black mayors about what it's like to live.
I mean, there you have the mayor of one of the preeminent cities in the world, let alone America, literally the heartland of America. And he is saying that law enforcement and incarceration, any of that, is a sickness, that they're basically evil. Law enforcement, label them totally together, no matter what their creed, color, or whatever. I mean, I don't know, Ted. How do you find a common ground with someone who believes that?
You know, unfortunately, he grew up in the race baiting days of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, and he's carrying it on. He still thinks there's all this suppression in there. Who was the mayor before him? Wasn't it Lori Lightfoot?
Yeah, Lori Lightfoot.
All right. Well, I think she was black. And so you look at the leadership that they've had, but he's saying they're having all these problems because of the way the system was set up, that it suppresses black people. Well, heck, you've had 8-10 years of black mayors. Then you had Rahm Emanuel before that, and that was all the Obama nights. You've got Obama there, and they want to use all these excuses for them not getting out of this situation. And if you keep race baiting like that, you know, I feel bad for the people of that area. And if you do the polling up there, 86% of the blacks want change. They want more police. And this ties into this next segment coming up here with Jasmine Crockett, because I think this is very important of what they espouse and what they talk about and the reason, and they make justifications for people to go out and commit crimes. And it's not acceptable. Follow the rule of law, you know, and hold people accountable when they break the law. It's crazy.
We're gonna play Jasmine Crockett right now, and as we go into this, you mentioned about Black Americans in Chicago, and I know we have Black Americans listening to us right now, and I would just, or people who live in poor neighborhoods, anything like that, regardless of your color, and I would just ask you, do you really believe that if someone steals your property, injures your child, let alone kills them, how does this apply as you're listening to Jasmine Crockett. Let's listen to him. We'll come back and talk about it.
And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, it doesn't make them a criminal. That is completely different. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. Committing a crime can come for a lot of different reasons.
Now there she said, now she doesn't qualify as someone stealing bread like Ocasio-Cortez. She said, if you commit a crime, doesn't mean you're a criminal. Now let me just be honest with you, Ted, and I've been honest about this before. I've committed crimes. You know, I was a drug addict, alcoholic. I ended up in jail. And guess what? At that time, I was a criminal. There is no question about it. And what scared me the most, Ted, is not what I had done, which was bad enough, but what I knew I was capable of doing if I kept going. That's what scared me. So do I need to be held accountable for the rest of my life? No. But, you know, if you commit crimes, you're a criminal. You are a criminal. And I can imagine these good people. There's a lot of good people in some of these high crime neighborhoods. Do they really believe this? I got to believe they don't.
You know, again, I'm perplexed at how she can say stuff like that, you know, and I know she wants to put in there, you know, well, you know, she doesn't say this, but Brandon Johnson did that. You know, when you look at the amount of incarceration, it's like 65 or 70% black versus white. But yet when you look at the FBI stats, I think it's 85% of violent crimes are caused by that black population. That is 14 to 16% of the general population. And so, yeah, there is a discrepancy in that. And there is some racism, I'm sure, in there. But that's the things we need to work on. But you don't excuse crime and just say, it doesn't make you a criminal. And, you know, if you did a crime, you're a criminal, as you pointed out. You do your time and then you move on. And that's behind you. And, you know, it's interesting because Trump passed the, I forget the name of the law, it might have been called the STOP Act, where it reformed our criminal justice system, biggest reform we've had in a long, long time. He doesn't get credit for that. And I think I talked to you about Duke Cunningham, who was a person from Gary, Indiana. First offense, it was drug distribution, got a double life sentence. And he appealed to Obama White House, didn't get anything out of him. President Trump pardoned him. And, you know, and so these people that say they want to bend the system and saying it's okay to do these crimes like AOC, it's okay to go lift a loaf of bread. No, it's not. It is not to do that. And if you're teaching your children that at an early age, think how they're going to be when they're an adult. You know, there is no accountability. And there again, you get to break down a society. These people need to be run out of office. And unfortunately, they're a reflection of their people in their district. And it's going to be interesting how this Zohran Madani plays out in New York City and what happens to New York City 5 years from now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, interestingly enough, you mentioned that. I don't know if you saw this, that Governor Hochul endorsed him in a New York Times editorial. But then when Madani was asked whether he would endorse her, he wouldn't answer. So,
see, that's smart politics there. But you got to think, does Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York City, really think this is the best person to put in there? And of course, the candidate field they have on the other side is absolutely terrible. You know, you got Cuomo and you've got Eric Adams, and the other guy, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Swilla, I think.
Yeah, Swilla. Yeah.
But, yeah, the Guardian Angel. So it's going to be really interesting to see that. Well, you know, Ted, we don't have much time left, but I think it's a very important topic. And I really believe that as far as coming together, it's not going to be government officials. They can tear us apart, but I don't think they're going to be able to bring us together. I think we're going to have to make a decision as Americans whether we're going to come together. And I really believe this next election cycle is a big deal. If we want divided government and tear it at each other, we'll keep the status quo. If we want to make change, we're going to be the change we want to make, I guess.
We do.
And
we really,
you know,
do.
I'm not a pessimist, you know, but I don't know if you've heard this before, but the pessimist said it can't get any worse than this. And the optimist said, oh, yes, it can. But maybe Charlie Kirk, because we're talking, Charlie Kirk's memorial services this weekend. I want to play this video, a snippet of something that Charlie Kirk recently said.
Sure.
And maybe he has the answer for us. So let's check this out.
What do you hope to get out of this? Why are you here?
Okay, I've been asked that question a lot. First of all, that question should not even have to be asked, but when people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When church starts happening, they fall apart. When civilization stops talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. People stop talking with each other because they lose their humanity. I wish we could be here without having my hat thrown off and stuff, but what we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have reasonable disagreement where violence is not an option.
They couldn't talk to Charlie Kirk anymore.
And there's all the hate speech right there. And you saw at the very end of that video, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she actually has come out and stated that she doesn't think we can come together, that we're going to have to separate. She's not calling for civil war, but basically she's saying she doesn't think we can come together. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts in general, Ted? Can we come together? Is there hope for us, or is it too late?
Well, I'm like you. I'm an eternal optimist. I wouldn't have run for Congress if not. I wouldn't have gotten married at an early age when everybody told me not to. So, yeah, I do think we can come together. But more important, we have to come together because there are no other options. If this country fails, China will run the world order, and they will have their policies in place, and you will be a controlled society by the Communist Party. And that's already happened in Venezuela. And so, yeah, we need to come together. How do you do that? Well, you have to have that dialogue. You have to be out there and talk, and you have to get the parties out of this. And I reference that book of James Madison by Noah Feldman. Those arguments, in fact, I was researching it for today, and I'll send it to you. They had these same arguments about the other party, and they wanted to do away with it. Number one, they didn't want to have parties when they started the country because they knew it would become fractioned, and you'd get the tribal mentality, and that's what we see today. But there has to be a way to overcome it, and we don't want to overcome it with a civil war. Absolutely not. So it's going to take that open dialogue. It's going to take mature people standing up and having these debates. I got dinged for that debate, the talk I had with AOC. The whole thing was to question her about her policies, telling people it's okay to shoplift. And of course that got all blown out, and I got doxxed, and I told people in a Republican conference that I felt like a Democrat, and I said, "Why is that?" I said, "Well, they doxed me, and we had 15,000 hate emails, and I said, I kind of feel like a victim. I must be a Democrat." And but we've got to grow through this, John, and it's going to take all of us. And the only way we're going to do that is by educating, motivating, and activating people. And I know we're going to talk about black tie and blue jeans, and this is a great start. And we'll promote the show later on before we close out.
Well, I guess you're saying there could be light at the end of the tunnel. I just hope it's not a train coming our way.
That's the great thing about Christianity, because it's built on hope of those things, the expectation of the things you can't see into the future. And that's what our country does. It gives you hope. It gives you opportunity based on those principles. So, yeah, we've got to make this work. There is no other option.
What choice do we really have, right? Well, Ted,
it's our responsibility to pass it on to the next generation. Let them fix it.
Like my, relative Ronald Reagan, you said we were together, like what he said. But
see
anyway,
the similarities.
Maybe I'm a better actor. I don't know. I didn't get any awards. But anyway, we are talking about coming together. You mentioned it, and we could put the picture back up there if we can of black tie and blue jeans. We're going to be there next Thursday night. So come together with us. The details are on that. I'll post it again across our various Facebook sites so people know. If you're within 50 to 100 miles of Alachua, Florida, basically Gainesville, north of there, come out and meet us. Ted, I'm going to give you the last word.
No, we want everybody to come out there, get the information, let's have the debate and ask questions, challenge us, challenge yourself, and ask these things. And, you know, when we look at these parties and the way the parties have bifurcated here, you know, you think of the definition of a woman. We've got a Supreme Court judge that won't define what a woman is. You've got all this stuff that's going on that is promoted on the left that goes against, it's a counterculture is what it is. And we can't continue to go down this road. And so come see John and I. We're going to break out the show and take it more nationally is what we want to do, but we can't do it without your help. And come by. We've got some brochures for you, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. And come see Byron Donalds, candidate for president or for governor of Florida.
Maybe president one day.
President Trump endorsed him, and there's going to be other people. One I'm excited to see is Blaise Ngolia. I met him right when I first ran, and he had before they had podcasts, he had a segment called Government Gone Wild, and he'd talk about the egregiousness of these programs. He was Doge before Doge was there. And,
absolutely. I look forward to seeing him again myself.
Yep. So come by, share your thoughts with John and I. We'd love to see you. And for anybody that wants to be a sponsor of the program, we'll talk to you about how to do that, costs and all those great things to promote your business, but more importantly, to promote the message of building this nation stronger and bringing it together as a United States of America.
What he said. Peace out.